The last drop of water fell from the rusty pump into Lily Thompson's bucket on a scorching August morning in 1883. And she knew with absolute certainty that everything her father had built in Linden, Texas, would die within a week. She stood there in the merciless sun, staring at the pathetic amount of water that barely covered the bottom of the wooden bucket. The land stretched out around her in all directions, cracked and brown, as lifeless as old bones. The cattle her father had raised for 30 years were already gone, sold off at devastating prices or dead in the fields. The crops had withered weeks ago. Even the tough mesquite trees looked like they were begging for mercy. Lily was 22 years old, and she had never felt so alone. Her father had died just 6 months earlier, leaving her this ranch and a legacy she was watching turn to dust. The drought had started last spring, but nobody expected it to last this long or hit this hard. The creek that ran through her property had been dry for 2 months. The well was giving up its last gasps. She carried the bucket back toward the small ranch house, her boots kicking up dust with every step. The 3 remaining chickens clucked weakly from their coop. She had already decided she would give them the water. At least they might lay an egg or 2 before everything ended. "Miss Thompson." The voice startled her so badly she nearly dropped the bucket. She spun around to see a man on horseback approaching from the east, leading a second horse behind him. He was tall in the saddle, with dark hair that curled slightly beneath his worn hat. His shirt was dusty from travel, and he had the weathered look of someone who spent his life outdoors. "I did not mean to frighten you," he said, pulling his horse to a stop a respectful distance away. His voice was rough but kind. "My name is Robert Xavier. I have been riding through, and I could not help but notice your situation." Lily felt her spine stiffen. She did not need charity, and she certainly did not need some stranger pointing out how desperate things had become. "I am managing just fine, Mr. Xavier. Thank you for your concern." He tilted his head slightly, and she noticed his eyes were a striking gray-blue, like storm clouds over the prairie. "That pump is bone dry. Your stock tanks are empty. And if I am reading the signs right, you have got maybe another day before things get truly dire." "Then I have got another day," she said, lifting her chin. "Good day to you, sir." Robert sat there for a moment, studying her. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled, not with pity but with what looked like genuine respect. "You have got your father's stubbornness. William Thompson was a good man. I met him once at a cattle auction in San Antonio. I am sorry for your loss." The mention of her father made her throat tighten. She had cried all her tears already, or so she thought, but hearing his name from this stranger's lips brought it all rushing back. "Thank you," she managed. Robert dismounted, his movements easy and confident. "Listen, Miss Thompson, I've got a ranch about 15 miles north of here. My property sits on an underground spring that has not failed yet. I've got more water than I need, and I've got the means to transport it. Let me help you." "I cannot pay you," Lily said quickly. Pride was all she had left, and even that was wearing thin. "I am not asking for payment," Robert said. He walked closer, and she could see the genuine concern in his face. He was older than her, maybe 30, with fine lines around his eyes from squinting into too many sunsets. "This drought is killing everyone. We either help each other or we all go under. It is as simple as that. Why would you help me? You do not even know me." "Because your father would have done the same," Robert said simply, "and because it is the right thing to do. Now, are you going to stand there arguing with me while those chickens die of thirst, or are you going to let me bring some water barrels over here?" Lily looked down at the pitiful bucket in her hands, then back at this stranger who had appeared like some kind of answer to a prayer she had been too proud to say out loud. Every practical bone in her body told her to accept. Her pride told her to refuse. Her chickens made the decision for her by clucking pathetically. "All right," she said quietly. "I would appreciate the help." Robert's face broke into a genuine smile that transformed his whole appearance. "Good. I will ride back to my place and load up some barrels. I should be back before sundown. In the meantime, you save that water for yourself and your animals. Do not waste a drop. I know how to manage in a drought, Mr. Xavier." "I am sure you do," he said, mounting his horse again. "And please call me Robert. We are going to be neighbors helping each other out. Might as well be on friendly terms." Before she could respond, he had turned his horse and was riding off, the spare horse trailing behind him. She watched him go, dust rising from the hooves, until he disappeared into the shimmering heat waves on the horizon. Lily stood there for a long moment, trying to understand what had just happened. She had been so certain she was facing this alone, that she would either have to abandon her father's ranch or die trying to save it. Now this stranger, this Robert Xavier, had appeared out of nowhere offering help with no strings attached. She did not trust it. People did not just help for no reason, not in her experience. There had to be something he wanted, some angle she was not seeing yet. But as the sun beat down on her head and the chickens clucked again, she decided she would worry about his motives later. Right now, she had water to distribute and animals to tend. By the time the sun started its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Lily had cleaned out every water container on the property and arranged them in the yard. She had moved the chickens to a spot with a bit of afternoon shade. She had even taken the time to wash her face and change into a less dusty dress, though she told herself it had nothing to do with Robert's return. She heard the wagon before she saw it. The creaking of wheels and the plodding of horses carried across the still air. Then Robert appeared, driving a large wagon loaded with 4 enormous water barrels. Another man sat beside him on the bench, younger and lighter-haired. "Miss Thompson," Robert called out as he pulled the wagon to a stop near her well. "This is my brother Samuel. He helped me load up." Samuel touched the brim of his hat and nodded. He looked to be in his early 20s with a friendly, open face. "Pleased to meet you, madam." "Thank you both for coming," Lily said, walking over to the wagon. Up close, the water barrels looked even bigger. Each one must have held 50 gallons or more. "Where do you want it?" Robert asked, already climbing down from the bench. "The stock tank first," Lily said. "Then if there is enough, I would like to fill some containers for the house." "There is plenty," Robert assured her, "and this is just the first trip. Samuel and I will bring more tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Lily felt her eyes widen. "How much water are you planning to give me?" "Enough to keep you going until this drought breaks or until we figure out a more permanent solution," Robert said. He was already working on the spigot of one of the barrels. "Samuel, help me with this." The two brothers worked efficiently, transferring water from the barrels to her stock tank. The sound of water splashing was the most beautiful thing Lily had heard in months. She found herself standing there just listening to it, watching the tank fill. "You have got some fence repairs that need doing," Samuel observed, looking around the property. "And that barn roof has seen better days." "I know," Lily said, feeling defensive again. "I have been doing what I can on my own." "I am sure you have," Samuel said quickly. "I did not mean any offense. I just meant that if you need a hand with anything, Robert and I are pretty handy with repairs." "Your brother has already done more than enough." Robert straightened up from the barrel, wiping his hands on his pants. "Samuel is right about that barn roof, though. If we get a storm, and eventually we will, that whole structure might come down. I could bring some supplies over, help you patch it up." "Why are you doing this?" Lily burst out. The question had been building in her all day, and she could not hold it back any longer. Nobody is this generous without wanting something in return. What do you want from me? Robert and Samuel exchanged glances. Then Robert walked over to her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him properly. His expression was serious now, all traces of that easy smile gone. 3 years ago my ranch was in trouble, he said quietly. Different problem than drought, but just as deadly. Rustlers had hit me hard, taken most of my herd. I was about ready to give up, head back east and admit defeat. Your father was one of 3 ranchers who helped me get back on my feet. He lent me cattle to rebuild my herd, helped me hire some good hands, even rode patrol with me until we got the rustling under control. He did not have to do any of that. I was just some newcomer from Missouri who did not know Texas from a hole in the ground, but he helped me anyway. Lily felt her throat tighten again. That sounded exactly like something her father would have done. I owe your father a debt I can never repay, Robert continued, but I can pay it forward by helping his daughter, so that is what I am doing. No strings, no hidden motives. Just one rancher helping another because it is right. She wanted to believe him. Everything in his face and his voice told her he was being truthful, but she had learned to be cautious, especially with men who showed up offering help. I appreciate that, she said carefully. And I will accept the water, because I need it. But I do not want you thinking I am some helpless woman who cannot manage on her own. I have never thought that for even a second, Robert said, and there was something in his eyes that made her heart beat a little faster. Anyone who has held onto this place alone through this drought is about as far from helpless as a person can get. I am offering help as a neighbor, nothing more. But nothing less either, Samuel added with a grin. Robert is stubborn when he decides to help someone. You might as well get used to seeing us around. Despite herself, Lily felt a small smile tug at her lips. Is that so? Afraid so, Robert said, and his own smile returned. Now, are you going to show me which containers you want filled for the house, or are we going to stand here talking until the sun goes down? They worked until dark, filling every container Lily had. The brothers moved with an easy rhythm born of working together for years, joking with each other and including Lily in their banter. By the time they finished, she found herself actually enjoying their company. We will be back tomorrow morning, Robert said as they prepared to leave. And I mean early. Want to beat the worst of the heat. You really do not have to keep bringing water, Lily protested, though her heart was not really in it anymore. Yes, I do, Robert said simply. Get some rest, Miss Thompson. Things are going to get better. She watched them drive away, the empty wagon rattling along the rough road. The night air was still hot, but for the first time in months, Lily felt something like hope stirring in her chest. The next morning, she was up before dawn, doing the chores that had become her routine. Feed the chickens with the last of the grain she had. Check the water levels in all the containers. Walk the fence line looking for breaks she could not afford to fix. When she heard the wagon approaching, the sun was barely over the horizon. Robert was alone this time, driving a different wagon with 6 barrels instead of 4. Samuel had to stay back and tend to our own stock, he explained as he climbed down. But I brought more this time. Do you ever sleep? Lily asked, shaking her head. I will sleep when it rains, Robert said with a grin. Which, judging by those clouds to the west, might be sooner than we think. Lily looked where he pointed. Sure enough, there were dark clouds building on the horizon. Her heart leaped with hope, then sank with caution. She had seen too many false promises this summer. Do not get excited, she said. Those clouds have been teasing us for weeks. They blow over without dropping a thing. Maybe this time will be different, Robert said. They worked together this morning, and Lily found herself noticing things about him she had not paid attention to before. The way his sleeves were rolled up, showing strong forearms tanned dark by the sun. The careful way he handled everything, never wasting a drop of water. The fact that he asked her opinion before doing anything on her property, treating her like an equal rather than some delicate flower that needed protecting. "Tell me about your ranch," she said as they filled the stock tank again. "You said it sits on a spring." "That is right," Robert said. "I got lucky when I bought the land. Paid a bit more than I wanted to, but the water source made it worth every penny. It is not a huge operation, but it is mine. Got about 200 head of cattle, some horses, a small house that needs work. Samuel lives with me, helps run things." "Is it just the two of you, just us?" "Our parents died during the war. Mother got sick, father was killed fighting for the Union. Samuel was just a kid then, maybe 8 or 9. I raised him as best I could." "That must have been hard," Lily said softly. Robert shrugged. "We managed. Same as you are managing now. You do what you have to do for family." They worked in companionable silence for a while. Lily found herself stealing glances at him when she thought he was not looking. There was something solid about Robert Xavier, something steady and reliable that made her feel safer than she had in months. "Tell me about your father," Robert said eventually. "What was he like?" Lily smiled, though it hurt. "Stubborn, hard-working. He loved this land more than anything. He bought it right after the war, built everything from nothing. He used to say that Texas got into your blood, that once you lived here you could never leave." "He was right about that," Robert agreed. "He taught me everything," Lily continued. "How to ride, how to rope cattle, how to read the weather and the land. When I was little, he used to put me on the saddle in front of him and we would ride out to check the herd. He would point out every plant, every animal, tell me about the ranch's history. I think he always knew I would be the one to inherit it, even though most fathers would prefer a son." "Then he was smarter than most fathers," Robert said. The clouds to the west were building higher now, and Lily could smell the electricity in the air. Her hope grew despite her best efforts to keep it in check. "We should get this finished before that storm hits," Robert said, following her gaze. "If it hits, you are right that they have been blowing over." They rushed to fill the remaining containers. The wind was picking up, hot and dry, blowing dust across the yard. The chickens had gone quiet, hunkering down in their coop. Even the air itself seemed to be holding its breath. Robert was loading the empty barrels back onto his wagon when the first fat raindrop hit the ground. They both froze, staring at the dark spot it left in the dust. Another drop fell. Then another. Then the sky opened up. The rain came down in sheets, so heavy and sudden that within seconds they were both soaked to the skin. Lily stood there with her face turned up to the sky, laughing and crying at the same time. She heard Robert laughing too, a deep, joyous sound that somehow cut through even the roar of the rain. Without thinking, she grabbed his hands and they spun around together in the downpour, dancing like fools in the muddy yard. The water was soaking into the ground, into her hair, into her soul. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever experienced. When they finally stopped spinning, dizzy and breathless, Lily found herself looking up into Robert's face. He was still holding her hands, water streaming down his face, his hair plastered to his head. His eyes were bright with happiness and something else, something that made her breath catch. "We are going to survive this," he said, and even over the rain she heard him clearly. "We will survive together." Something shifted in that moment. Some barrier that had been holding Lily back crumbled away. This man had appeared in her darkest hour and brought her not just water but hope. He had asked for nothing in return, treated her with respect, made her laugh when she thought she might never laugh again. "Together," she repeated, and she knew she was not just talking about the drought anymore. The rain lasted for 2 glorious hours. By the time it finally tapered off, everything looked different. The land was still brown and parched, but puddles dotted the yard and the air smelled clean and fresh. The stock tank was overflowing. Robert's wagon had gotten stuck in the mud. They tried for an hour to get it free, but the wheels were sunk deep. "I will have to come back with Samuel and more horses," Robert said finally, wiping mud off his hands. He looked at Lily, and she saw hesitation in his face for the first time. "That is, if you do not mind me leaving it here overnight." "You could stay," Lily heard herself say. The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise him. "I mean, it is getting late and the ride back to your ranch is long. I have got a spare room, nothing fancy, but it is dry." "I do not want to impose," Robert said carefully. "You are not imposing. After everything you have done for me, it is the least I can offer." She paused, then added more honestly, "And I would like the company." Robert's face softened. "Then I would be honored to accept." They took care of the horses first, getting them into the small barn and rubbed down. Then Lily led Robert into the house, suddenly very aware of how modest it was. The main room served as kitchen and sitting area, with a fireplace that did most of the heating and cooking. 2 small bedrooms branched off from it, along with a storage pantry. "It is not much," she said, feeling self-conscious. "It is a home," Robert said, looking around with approval. "That is everything." Lily got the fire going and put on coffee. They were both still damp from the rain, and the evening air had turned cool for the first time in months. She found some cornbread she had made 2 days ago and some preserved peaches from last year's harvest. "It is not much of a dinner," she apologized as she set the food on the small table. "It is perfect," Robert said, and the way he looked at her made her heart skip. They ate by lamplight, talking easily now. Robert told her about growing up in Missouri, about the journey to Texas, about the challenges of starting a ranch from nothing. Lily talked about her mother who had died when she was 12, and about learning to run the ranch alongside her father. "He taught me that land is more than just property," she said. "It is a responsibility, a partnership. You take care of it and it takes care of you." "My father used to say something similar," Robert said. "He was a farmer back in Missouri, small operation, but he loved it. I think that is why I wanted to ranch out here. It is in the blood." "Do you miss Missouri?" Robert considered the question. "Sometimes, but Texas feels like home now." "There is something about this place, the openness of it, the challenges. It tests you, but it also rewards you if you are willing to work for it." "My father said almost the exact same thing," Lily said softly. They finished eating and Lily showed Robert to the spare room. It was small, barely big enough for the narrow bed and a washstand, but it was clean and comfortable. "Thank you," Robert said, standing in the doorway. "For the meal, for the room, for the conversation. This has been one of the best days I have had in a while, drought and mud and all." "Thank you," Lily said, "for everything. I do not know what I would have done if you had not come along when you did." "You would have survived," Robert said with certainty. "You are stronger than you think." They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to say good night. Lily was acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the warmth radiating from his body. "Good night, Robert," she said finally. "Good night, Lily." She went to her own room, but sleep was a long time coming. She lay in her bed listening to the distant sound of thunder, thinking about the man sleeping in the next room, thinking about his hands holding hers in the rain, thinking about the way he looked at her like she was someone worth knowing. The morning brought more clouds but no rain. Robert was up early, already outside checking on the horses when Lily emerged from her room. "Samuel should be here soon with more horses," he called when he saw her. "We will get that wagon out in no time." Sure enough, within an hour, Samuel arrived with 2 additional horses and a fresh team. The brothers worked together to free the wagon, their teamwork smooth and efficient. That rain helped, but it is not near enough, Samuel said, looking at the sky. We are going to need a lot more before things really turn around. But it is a start, Lily said. It is definitely a start, Robert agreed. He turned to her and she saw reluctance in his face. I should get back to my own ranch, got things that need tending to. Of course, Lily said, trying to hide her disappointment. But I will be back, he added quickly. Tomorrow or the next day. Just to check on things, make sure you have got enough water. I would like that, Lily admitted. After they left, the ranch felt emptier than it had before. Lily threw herself into work, repairing what she could, planning what she would do once things improved. But her mind kept drifting back to Robert. To his smile, his steady presence, the way he made her feel like she was not alone in the world. Robert did come back, 2 days later, and then 3 days after that. Each time he brought water or supplies or help with repairs. Sometimes Samuel came with him. Sometimes he came alone. The alone times were Lily's favorites, though she tried not to examine why too closely. It rained twice more that month, small showers that helped but were not enough to break the drought. Still, it was more than they had seen in months, and spirits across Linden started to lift. People are saying the worst might be over, Robert said one afternoon as they worked together to repair a section of fence. September had arrived, bringing slightly cooler temperatures and a hint of autumn in the air. You believe it? Lily asked. I want to, Robert said, but I have learned not to count on anything until it actually happens. They had fallen into an easy rhythm over the past few weeks, working together, talking, sharing meals. Lily found herself looking forward to his visits more than she wanted to admit. She caught herself thinking about him at odd moments during the day, wondering what he was doing, whether he was thinking about her too. Can I ask you something? Robert said suddenly, setting down the post he had been holding. Of course. Why did you never marry? A woman like you, smart and capable, and... He trailed off, looking embarrassed. I am sorry, that is too personal. No, it is all right, Lily said. She had been asked the question before, usually with judgment behind it, but from Robert it felt different. There were a couple of men who showed interest over the years, but they all wanted me to give up the ranch, move to town, be a proper wife. My father needed me here, and even if he had not, I could not imagine leaving. This land is part of me. I understand that, Robert said quietly. What about you? Lily asked, turning the question back. Why have you not married? Robert was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the horizon. I was engaged once back in Missouri, right before I decided to come to Texas. She did not want to leave, and I could not stay. She married someone else within 6 months. I am sorry. I am not, Robert said, looking at her now. If she had come with me, I never would have met you. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Lily felt her heart hammering in her chest. Robert, she said softly. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes. I know this might be too soon or too forward, but I need you to know something. These past few weeks, getting to know you, working beside you, they have been some of the best of my life. You are the strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever met, and I... Yes, Lily interrupted, standing on her toes to kiss him. For a moment, Robert seemed frozen in surprise. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close as he kissed her back. It was nothing like the rough, demanding kisses she had heard other women whisper about. It was gentle and sweet and perfect, filled with all the feelings that had been building between them for weeks. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Robert rested his forehead against hers. I was hoping you felt the same way, he murmured. I have been hoping you would do that for 2 weeks now, Lily admitted. They finished the fence repair in a daze of happiness, stealing glances and touches whenever they could. By the time Robert had to leave, they had made plans for him to come to dinner the next evening. A real dinner, Lily specified. Not just cornbread and preserves. I will cook something proper. I would eat dirt if it meant spending time with you, Robert said, making her laugh. That night, Lily went through her mother's old recipe book, planning the perfect meal. She cleaned the house until it shone, arranged wildflowers in a jar on the table, changed her dress 3 times before settling on a simple blue cotton that brought out her eyes. Robert arrived exactly on time, cleaned up and wearing a shirt she had not seen before. He had brought wildflowers too, which made them both laugh. "Great minds," he said, handing her the bouquet. The dinner was good, but neither of them paid much attention to the food. They were too busy talking, learning everything they could about each other. Lily discovered that Robert loved to read, that he had a small but prized collection of books back at his ranch. Robert learned that Lily could play the piano, though her mother's old instrument needed tuning. "I could bring someone out from town to fix it," Robert offered. "I would love to hear you play." "Maybe someday," Lily said, touched by the offer. After dinner, they sat on the porch watching the stars come out. The night was clear and cool, and the sky was brilliant with countless points of light. "I need to tell you something," Robert said, taking her hand in his. "I am falling in love with you, Lily Thompson. Maybe I have been falling since the day I first rode onto your property and saw you standing there with that bucket, too stubborn and proud to admit you needed help." Lily felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears. "I am falling in love with you too. I did not think I would ever feel this way about anyone, but you came into my life exactly when I needed you, and you have been showing me ever since that I do not have to face everything alone." "You will never have to face anything alone again," Robert promised. "Not if I have any say in it." He kissed her again, and this time there was more heat to it, more promise. Lily felt herself responding, her body awakening to feelings she had never experienced before. "I should go," Robert said reluctantly, pulling back. "It is getting late." "You could stay," Lily offered. Then, realizing how that sounded, she added quickly, "In the spare room, I mean. Like before." "I know what you meant," Robert said gently. "And I appreciate the offer, but I want to do this right. Court you properly, not rush into anything that you might regret later." "I would not regret it," Lily said. "Maybe not. But I would never forgive myself if I did not treat you with the respect you deserve." He stood, helping her to her feet. "Let me court you properly. Let me take you to church socials and town dances. Let me show everyone in Linden that you are my girl." "I am your girl?" Lily asked, unable to hide her smile. "If you will have me," Robert said. "I will have you," Lily confirmed. Over the next few months, Robert was true to his word. He courted her properly, calling on her regularly, taking her to town events, introducing her to his friends. The drought finally broke in October with a series of heavy storms that filled the creeks and recharged the wells. The land, resilient as always, began to recover. Lily's ranch started to come back to life. With Robert's help, she was able to buy some cattle and rebuild her herd. Samuel became a regular presence too, treating her like the sister he had never had. The 3 of them often worked together, building something that felt like family. Robert proposed on a Sunday evening in November, on the same spot where he had first kissed her by the fence line. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and he got down on one knee with a simple gold ring that had belonged to his mother. "Lily Thompson, you are the strongest, smartest, most beautiful woman I have ever known," he said. "I cannot imagine spending my life with anyone else. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Lily said, pulling him to his feet and kissing him. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married in the small church in Linden on a bright day in December. Lily wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit. Robert wore a new suit ordered special from San Antonio. Samuel stood as best man, and several women from town who Lily had become friendly with attended as guests. The preacher, an elderly man named Reverend Harrison, spoke about the trials that bring people together, about how sometimes God sends us exactly what we need exactly when we need it. "These two young people have weathered storms together," he said, looking out at the small gathering. "They have faced drought and hardship and uncertainty, and they have learned that together they are stronger than they are apart. That is what marriage is about. Two people choosing each other day after day in good times and in bad." When Robert kissed her after they said their vows, Lily felt like her heart might burst with happiness. They held a small reception at Robert's ranch, which would now be their home. Lily had made the difficult decision to lease out her father's property to a neighbor, unable to run two ranches effectively. But she kept the land in her name, a connection to her past and her father's legacy. Robert's house was bigger than hers had been, with 3 bedrooms and a real parlor. Samuel had moved into the bunkhouse with the ranch hands, giving the newlyweds privacy. "I know it is not fancy," Robert said as he carried her over the threshold, "but it is home, our home now. It is perfect," Lily assured him. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, full of nervous laughter and whispered words of love. Robert was patient and gentle, making sure Lily felt safe and cherished. When they finally came together, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, like they had been made for each other. Afterward, lying in his arms, Lily felt a contentment she had never known before. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," Robert replied, kissing her forehead. "And I am going to love you every day for the rest of our lives." Life as a married woman was different than Lily had imagined, but better. She and Robert worked side by side, managing the ranch together. He valued her opinions, listened to her ideas, treated her as an equal partner in everything. They built on Robert's existing herd, expanding the operation carefully and sustainably. Samuel remained close, becoming the brother Lily had never had. He teased them mercifully about being newlyweds, but she could see the genuine happiness in his eyes. He loved having family again. The winter was mild and spring brought abundant rain. The land recovered from the drought, green and lush in a way it had not been for years. Cattle prices improved. Life was good. In late spring, Lily began to suspect she might be pregnant. She waited to be sure before telling Robert, visiting the doctor in town who confirmed her suspicions. She was going to have a baby, due sometime in the fall. She told Robert that evening after dinner. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, something that had become their nightly ritual. "I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hand. "What is it?" Robert asked, looking at her with concern. "Are you all right?" "I am more than all right," Lily said, smiling. "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Robert just stared at her. Then a huge grin split his face and he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "We are having a baby," he shouted loud enough for the hands in the bunkhouse to hear. "I am going to be a father. Put me down before you drop me," Lily laughed. Robert set her down carefully, immediately looking worried. "Should you be on your feet? Do you need to rest?" "What did the doctor say?" "The doctor said I am healthy and everything is fine," Lily assured him. "I can keep working, keep living my life. Having a baby does not make me fragile." "I know that," Robert said, "but I am allowed to worry. You are carrying the most precious thing in the world." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Lily continued to help around the ranch, though Robert and Samuel both insisted on taking over the heavier tasks. As her belly grew, she found herself thinking about her own mother, wishing she could ask her advice, share this experience with her. "She would be so proud of you," Robert said one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her swollen stomach. "Your mother. She would be proud of the woman you have become, the life you have built." "I hope so," Lily said softly. The baby came in October, on a clear, cool day that reminded Lily of the day Robert had first appeared on her property more than a year ago. The labor was long and difficult, attended by the doctor, and two women from town who had experience with childbirth. Robert paced in the other room, going quietly out of his mind with worry. Samuel tried to distract him with conversation, but nothing helped until they finally heard the thin wail of a newborn baby. The doctor emerged, smiling. "Congratulations, Robert. You have a son, a healthy, strong boy." Robert practically ran into the bedroom. Lily was propped up against the pillows, exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up when he entered, her eyes shining. "Come meet your son," she said. Robert approached on shaky legs, staring down at the tiny red face peeking out from the blankets. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was making small, snuffling sounds. "He is perfect," Robert breathed. "You are amazing, both of you. We need to name him," Lily said. They had discussed names, but nothing had felt quite right. Now, looking at their son, Robert thought of his father, the man who had taught him about integrity and hard work, who had died too young. "William," he said, "after your father, if that is all right with you." Lily felt tears spill down her cheeks. "William Robert Xavier, it is perfect." Samuel was allowed in next, and he stared at his nephew with wonder. "He is so small," he said, sounding awed. "All babies are small," Lily said, laughing. "Can I hold him?" They showed Samuel how to support the baby's head, and he sat very carefully with his nephew in his arms. "Hello, William," he said softly. "I am your Uncle Samuel. I am going to teach you how to ride and rope and everything else you need to know about being a cowboy." "Not until he is older," Robert said firmly, but he was smiling. The next few months were a blur of sleepless nights and new routines. William was a good baby for the most part, though he had healthy lungs and was not shy about using them when he was hungry or uncomfortable. Lily adapted to motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else, though there were days when exhaustion made her weep. Robert was a devoted father, taking his turn walking William when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint, talking to his son constantly even though the baby could not possibly understand him yet. "I want him to know my voice," Robert explained. "I want him to know he is loved." By William's first birthday, he was walking and getting into everything. He had his mother's blue eyes and his father's smile. The ranch was thriving, with the herd larger than it had been since before the drought. Lily had started taking on some of the bookkeeping and planning, her mind for numbers and strategy proving invaluable. "We should think about building a new barn," she said one evening, going over the accounts. "We have outgrown the old one, and if we want to keep expanding, we need more space." "I will talk to the carpenter in town," Robert agreed. "Maybe we should add on to the house too. If we are planning to have more children, we are going to need more room." Lily looked up from the ledger, smiling. "Are we planning to have more children?" "I was hoping," Robert said. "Unless you would rather not." "I would like more," Lily admitted. "I always wanted a big family. Growing up an only child was lonely sometimes." "Then we will have more," Robert said, coming around to kiss her. "As many as you want." Their second child, a daughter they named Rose, came 2 years later. She was quieter than William had been, with reddish hair that neither of them could account for until Robert remembered his grandmother had been a redhead. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The children grew. The ranch prospered. Lily's father's property was eventually sold to a young couple just starting out, with Lily's blessing. She used the money to buy more land adjacent to Robert's ranch, expanding their operation even further. Samuel met a girl at a church social, a pretty blonde named Melissa who was the daughter of the general store owner. They courted for a year before marrying, and Samuel built a house on the far end of the ranch property. Melissa was sweet and kind, and she and Lily became close friends. William started helping around the ranch as soon as he was big enough, showing the same love for the land that both his parents had. Rose was more interested in books and learning, but she was a capable horsewoman and could rope a calf when needed. 2 more children followed over the years, another boy named James and finally another girl, Catherine. The house had to be expanded twice to accommodate everyone. The barn Robert and Lily had discussed was built, then a second one 5 years later. Through it all, Robert and Lily remained partners in every sense of the word. They still made time for their evening talks on the porch, still held hands when they walked, still looked at each other with the same love that had brought them together all those years ago. "Do you ever think about that day I rode onto your property?" Robert asked one evening. They were in their 40s now, with streaks of gray in their hair and lines on their faces earned through years of hard work and laughter. "I think about it often," Lily admitted. "I was so desperate, so scared that I was going to lose everything, and then you appeared like some kind of miracle." "You were the miracle," Robert said. "You taught me what real strength looks like, what courage means. I came to help you, but you ended up saving me just as much as I saved you." "We saved each other," Lily corrected. Their children grew and eventually started families of their own. William took over more of the ranch operations, showing a natural talent for leadership. Rose married a teacher from town and moved to San Antonio but visited often. James became a veterinarian, putting his love for animals to practical use. Catherine, the youngest, surprised everyone by becoming a writer, publishing stories about life in Texas. Robert and Lily grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They faced new challenges, weathered more droughts, survived economic downturns and changing times. But they faced it all together, just as Robert had promised that day in the rain. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Children and grandchildren filled the house with noise and laughter. A long table was set up outside, loaded with food. Robert stood to make a toast, raising his glass of wine. 30 years ago, I married the most remarkable woman I have ever known. She has been my partner, my best friend, my greatest love. We have built a life together, raised children, created something that will last long after we are gone. Lily Thompson, Xavier, you are still the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, and I love you more today than I did the day we met. "Hear, hear," Samuel called out, and everyone raised their glasses. Lily stood as well, tears in her eyes. "Robert Xavier came into my life when I needed him most. He shared his water, his strength, his heart. He taught me that I did not have to face the world alone. Everything good in my life, every happiness I have known, started the day he rode onto my property and said we would survive together. And we have, Robert. We have survived and thrived and built something beautiful. I love you with all my heart." They kissed while their family cheered and clapped. Later that evening, after everyone had eaten and the children were playing in the yard, Lily and Robert walked out to the fence line where he had first kissed her. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. "Remember what I said that day in the rain?" Robert asked, taking her hand. "You said we would survive together," Lily replied. "We did more than survive," Robert said. "We lived, really lived. And I would do it all again every moment just to end up here with you." "Me too," Lily said, leaning her head on his shoulder. They stood there as the sun sank below the horizon. 2 people who had faced drought and hardship and uncertainty, who had chosen each other every single day, who had built a legacy that would endure. The land around them was green and healthy, marked by their years of careful stewardship. The ranch house behind them was filled with family and love. The future stretched ahead, bright with promise. Robert had been right all those years ago. They had survived together. But more than that, they had loved together, built together, thrived together. They had taken the worst circumstances and transformed them into something beautiful. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Lily thought about that desperate woman she had been, standing by a dry well with an empty bucket. She could hardly recognize herself in that memory now. That woman had been alone and afraid, convinced she had to face everything by herself. But she had learned better. She had learned that accepting help was not weakness but wisdom, that letting someone in did not mean giving up independence, but gaining something infinitely more valuable. That love, real love, was about partnership and equality and choosing each other every day. "What are you thinking about?" Robert asked. "How lucky I am," Lily said simply. "How grateful I am that you decided to help a stubborn woman who tried to turn you away." "I am the lucky one," Robert said. "You could have chosen anyone, but you chose me." "There was never anyone else," Lily said truthfully. "From that first moment, even when I was too scared and proud to admit it, I knew you were special." They walked back to the house hand in hand, their shadows long in the fading light. Inside, their family was laughing and talking, filling the rooms with warmth and life. William was teaching one of his young sons how to whittle. Rose was reading to a group of the younger grandchildren. Samuel and Melissa were dancing in the parlor to music from the old piano that Robert had gotten fixed years ago. This was what they had built together. Not just a ranch or a business, but a family, a legacy, a love that had weathered every storm and grown stronger with time. Years continued to pass. Robert and Lily eventually handed over the day-to-day operations of the ranch to William, though they remained active and involved well into their 60s. They became the heart of the family, the ones everyone turned to for advice and wisdom and stories about the old days. They never forgot their beginning, that desperate time when drought had threatened everything. They remained generous neighbors, helping others who faced hard times, remembering what it had meant when Robert had chosen to share his water instead of hoarding it for himself. On their 40th anniversary, Robert was in his 60s, his hair completely gray now, his body not quite as strong as it used to be. But his eyes still lit up when he looked at Lily, and his hand still reached for hers whenever they sat together. 40 years, Lily marveled. They were sitting on the porch, watching another sunset. It was their favorite place, had been since the beginning. "It feels like a lifetime and like no time at all." "I remember everything," Robert said. "Every moment with you is burned into my memory. That first day, how fierce you looked standing there with that bucket, how beautiful you were dancing in the rain. The day you married me, the births of our children, every sunset we have watched together." "We have had a good life," Lily said. "The best life," Robert agreed. "I could not have asked for anything better." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from decades of companionship. Around them, the ranch was peaceful. Cattle lowed in the distance. A night-bird called. The air smelled of grass and earth and home. "Thank you," Lily said suddenly. "For what?" "For seeing me when I felt invisible. For helping me when I was too proud to ask. For loving me every day for 40 years. For being exactly who you are." "Thank you for saying yes," Robert replied. "For taking a chance on a wandering cowboy who showed up with water barrels and big promises. For building this life with me. For being my partner in everything." As the sun finally disappeared and the stars began to emerge, they sat together on the porch they had shared for so many years. The house behind them was quiet now, with just the two of them in residence most days. But it did not feel empty. It felt full of memories of love, of all the years they had spent together. Robert took Lily's hand, his grip still strong despite his age. She squeezed back, her touch familiar and dear. "I love you," he said, as he had said countless times over the decades. "I love you too," she replied, as she always did. Always and forever. They had survived together, just as Robert had promised that rainy day so long ago. They had faced drought and hardship, raised children, built a legacy. They had laughed together and cried together and grown old together. And as the night deepened around them, they sat hand in hand, two people who had found each other in the hardest of times and created something beautiful. Their love story had started with an empty well and an act of kindness. It had grown into something that would endure long after they were gone, living on in their children and grandchildren, in the land they had nurtured, in the example they had set. The drought had ruined her land. A cowboy had shared his water and said they would survive together. And they had done more than just survive. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and built a legacy that would last for generations to come. Their story was one of resilience and partnership, of two strong people who were even stronger together. It was a testament to the power of choosing kindness over selfishness, of reaching out instead of closing off, of building something together that neither could have created alone. As the stars wheeled overhead and the night settled around them, Robert and Lily remained on their porch, still holding hands, still together, still in love after 40 years. Their journey had started with water shared in a time of desperate need. It had blossomed into a love that would never run dry, a partnership that had weathered every storm, a bond that nothing could break. They had survived together. They had lived together. They had loved together, and that was everything.